I'm Tim Conaway, and I'm running for President of the United States. Congress passes laws all the time covering a whole lot of areas. Congress has established various departments within the government. Congress is always talking about doing stuff because the people need it, but Congress has limited authority under the Constitution of the United States. The Constitution was written to create a federal government that had built-in limitations. This is because the people of the various states were wary of one central governmental power, having been under the rule of thumb of the monarchy of Britain and subject to whatever Parliament did, even though they had no representation in Parliament. The United States government, the federal government, was formed to bridge those areas where it would be inappropriate or ineffective for individual states to act, such as in making treaties with foreign countries, imposing tariffs. The Congress has the right to impose uniform tariffs. Congress has the right to set up an army and a navy. Congress also has the right to call out militia, although the militia are subject to the government of each state. Basically, the federal government was supposed to be a sort of an assistant to the independent state. Each independent state in the United States could run its own business, and as long as it didn't cross certain boundaries that would have an impact on the other states, then that was okay. In those cases, that's where the federal government stepped in. So the federal government has grown to be bigger and powerful, more in control of what the states do, making the states subject to the federal government rather than making the federal government subject to the states as was originally intended. How do we know this? Well, the people who wrote the Constitution, the people who argued for and against the Constitution, put all this on paper. We don't have to guess at what they thought. We don't have to guess at what their intentions were. It's all laid out very clearly. The federal government has grown too large and has taken on a great deal of power that it doesn't actually have. The federal government is doing things in the name of, well, the people want this, although that's not how it was intended to work. It was intended to work according to the limitations of the Constitution. The more that the federal government takes on, the more programs that it creates, the more power that it has. And the more power that the federal government has, the less freedom citizens have. That is a simple factor. And, there are some excellent and very inexpensive books like this one that are available. I think this costs $1. It's got the Constitution in it. It's also got statements from George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, the founders of this country, regarding the will of the people and the right of what the people have to do. One of the direct impacts on all of us, besides this subtle and increasing federal power over the people, is that the federal government is not serving the people, it's serving itself. And the biggest way that it serves itself is through the creation of departments under which there are agencies, bureaus, divisions, programs of all sorts that nowhere in the Constitution is there any authority for these to be established. The federal government is in major debt, and we hear about the debt crisis just about every time that they meet. And even though they, many years ago, imposed a debt ceiling, more than 20 times they have raised that ceiling instead of dealing with that ceiling by cutting back federal expenditures. The bureaucracy is not responsive to the American people. The programs that are supposed to be helpful to the people are not really helpful to the American people, but they enable the federal government, the giant bureaucracy, to become enriched and grow with each passing budget that comes out of the House of Representatives. Many of these departments do not need to exist. Basically, there are areas that should be handled by the states. The Department of Education is the first one that comes to mind, and many conservative thinkers agree education is a local initiative. It is not a federal initiative. And there are other departments too, Department of Labor, the Department of Housing. These are all local issues that need to be dealt with by state governments. In the Constitution, there is an addendum to the Constitution called the Bill of Rights. And these, in the Bill of Rights, it is made very clear that any authority not given to the federal government by the Constitution rests with the states. So this was foreseen, and there is a solution to it. If we look into any of these departments, we find that many of these agencies and bureaus and divisions were set up to achieve a single purpose, and yet they didn't achieve that purpose, and the response to that was to continue to fund their failure. We need to take a very serious look at what's going on in the federal bureaucracy, and we need to, one, eliminate all the programs that are not authorized by the Constitution. There would have to be a transition period to roll some of this over to the states where this belongs, and if the states don't want it, that's entirely up to them. The states are independent in their ability to run their own affairs. The federal government cannot dictate to the states how to run their own affairs. The states simply cannot make laws that are less lenient than federal laws where federal laws justly apply. As President of the United States, I can bring an organizational skill to this problem. I can see what is wasted. I can see what doesn't fit the overall mission statement, which is the Constitution, and I can develop a plan to transition those things to states that need to be transitioned, and I can also oversee the transition as well as the dismantling of these departments. I believe that in the first year of my presidency, we can cut the spending of the federal government by at least 25%. And I think that's a higher number, but it's government and it moves slowly, so I'm going to say 25%. Over a 4-year period, it can be cut by at least 40%. And in cutting these things, we have a leaner and more efficient bureaucracy that can actually deal with the situations that it needs to deal with and have some clear priorities. I'm Tim Conaway. I'm running for President of the United States. And I am an organizer, a streamliner, and somebody who knows how to do more with less, to increase efficiency while spending less. Let's cut the federal government down to where it should be, and let's return to the people their own freedom so that they're not locked in by these federal governments, because it's your money that they're spending, but they don't spend your money without expecting something back in return for you, and that something is a loss of your freedom. I'm Tim Conaway. I'm running for President of the United States. Let's rein in the federal government.